Hi, how you doing? Well, it's middle of November, zone 3, and there is not a lot left to be done in the garden. I'm actually quite thankful that we don't have a ton of snow just yet. No, I mean very little, just skiffs here and there that have not melted from the last little bit that fell. So most of my gardening has been moved indoors now, and we're going to check on that in a little bit. But I just thought I'd give you an update on what's going on in zone 3 in November. My name is Sharon. I garden on a large yard in a small town in east central Saskatchewan, zone 3. Welcome to my Sask Garden. All right, so the one thing I have left going on is a few carrots left in the garden. And we've had a low of -15. They're planted here in this raised bed. I had 2 rows. Most of them I dug out, and yesterday I dug out a few more, and I was kind of surprised, that I was still getting some nice carrots. Like I said, we got down to -15, and I thought for sure they'd kind of be frozen and mushy, but they weren't. So I thought, well, I'll get the rest of these out, and I would get a potato fork and dig them out and such. But there really is only a few that I have covered up here with some straw. And the one reason that I thought for sure that they would no longer be good is because the top couple inches of the soil is frozen. But as soon as I break that kind of crust, there's one on the surface. And so, that one is just kind of wilty and mushy because it has frozen. But anyways, as soon as I kind of break through this frozen bit, the soil is not frozen underneath yet. And so they're okay. And right there we go. Oh, I broke that one. Anyways, pretty nice looking carrots still. Oh, there we go. Not bad at all. I did cook a couple last night. The ones I dug yesterday, I cooked them for supper. They tasted just fine. And this was kind of an experiment for me, how long they would survive. I suspect that covered with straw, I know lots of people do that, They cover them with straw or leaves or something like that just to prevent the soil from freezing really, really hard. And can go out, and if we had snow, of course that would be an insulator as well. And then you go out in the middle of winter and you dig yourself some fresh carrots. I don't think I want to come out in the wintertime, to be honest, and dig through snow. If I didn't have somewhere for storage for carrots, I have an extra fridge. But if you didn't have somewhere for storing carrots, that would certainly be an option for fresh carrots. Right from your garden. So this is what I noticed yesterday. Some of these small ones, they just didn't grow anymore. So I'm just gonna not bother with those. I think this size is okay, but these little ones are a bit of a pain for cleaning and preparing. Wow, those are tight in there. They're of course not coming out the cleanest either because the soil is damp. I mean, it's nice that the soil is damp before frost, or before it freezes. It's really frozen though on the top, And surprisingly, the tops of the carrots are still good, even though they're kind of, you know, just a little exposed. So here we go. Just in case you wonder what it was like to dig up carrots out of your garden in the middle of November. This row, I just can't remember the name of it, but I'll put it on the screen. I don't think it matters. I think carrots are carrots when it comes to their cold tolerance, and as long as they're protected a little bit, I think that they'll be all right. I'll probably do this again next year, and just maybe get the straw on there just a little bit earlier to keep it protected. Okay, so I thought we could check in on some of the plants that I'm overwintering. I took a selection from outside, and one of the things is the wire vine, which I'm quite happy with. My plan is actually to layer a bunch of cuttings and start new plants with that. But so far it's actually making kind of a nice looking house plant. I was away for a little while. I went to Calgary for a week, and when I came home, that one was particularly dry. It was dried right out, and you know, the leaves all kind of looked a little bit shriveled, and I thought I killed it by not watering it well enough before I left, but I gave it a good watering and it bounced right back. So it has also grown quite a bit. It was an extra plant that had layered root cutting all on its own in the pot that I had it outside. So I just dug up that small one and brought it in, and there we go. The other plant that I have taken from outside and brought in is this Dichondra. I dug up a couple from outside and brought them in. Two things. They seem to really, I have one of these in here because they do seem to like, the fungus gnats do seem to like this particular plant, and maybe it's because of you know, the cover that there is, the extra over the soil. So you can see that it is kind of drying here, not looking very, very nice, although down here is all just fine. Normally when I would bring a plant in, I would cut that right back, which I did think about, but on the other hand, I do want to again layer a bunch of cuttings, and that requires this stuff laying over top of soil while still attached to this plant. That's what I think I'm going to do to get some cuttings going. For right now, I'm just going to leave it this way. It's really only this top portion that is drying up like that, and I don't think it should be from the lights. But as long as all of this is good and it's not drying up at all, you know, maybe the odd one, but it's not drying up, so it's doing okay. My thought is they're going to be very easy to start new cuttings. While I was in Calgary, I bought a new geranium. It doesn't look like much, but it is called Vancouver Centennial, and it is a stellar geranium, so it's Stellar. Has a different kind of bloom, and it's got a beautiful variegated leaf. I did get it on a good sale, and so I packed it away in my carry-on, and I did bring it. My geraniums are doing very nicely, and I'm just going to get you in close here for that. Here is one of the ivy leaf geraniums that is still blooming, you know, like crazy, and it has put on a lot of growth, actually a lot of growth, new growth, just since I brought it in. There is a lot of growth and lots of new buds, so, and lots of mess as they fall as well. So I'm just going to let it keep going and keep blooming. I'm not going to cut it back for now, but I suspect I'm thinking by Christmas it may start to slow down a bit. And here we have another a zonal geranium that I potted up to bring in as a mother plant. And just over here is the burgundy colored ivy leaf. And down here are more of the zonals that are, again, blooming like crazy. This one in particular, I mean, you can barely, you actually can barely see the foliage for all the blooms that are on it. And then as well, I have the Rex Begonias that I dug up from outside. I had them planted in the ground outside and dug them up, and they're doing well. They're doing better now that I put them here under the lights, because I did have them initially upstairs and they weren't doing as well, so they just seem to be doing better here under these grow lights. And this shelving unit, as well as this one in the corner, they're new to me this year. I just got them. They're different kind of grow lights than what I have in my grow room. And so it's a little bit of a test at the moment. This is another plant that I brought in from outside. This is the shamrock. You could see that it's now blooming. Seems to be happy enough. It did die back quite a bit when I first brought it in. It likes a little bit more water inside than it seemed to outside, but maybe it still needs to be rooted. That could be. These are my regal geraniums, and I'm not going to say they're suffering, but they do grow differently than zonal geraniums. So regal geraniums are also known as Martha Washingtons, and I found out recently that they bloom differently. So they actually put out like an entire stem would be a bloom stem, and then another stem would be a growth stem, and you don't want to take cuttings from the bloom stem. This is how I understand it. And so I cut out, because they did have a lot of blooms on them, so while I could see there what was a bloom stem, I cut them all out. I trimmed them all out, and now what's left should be just growth stems, and then I should be able to take cuttings from that. But they have been getting a lot of these yellow leaves, which come off fairly easy. But I have been picking quite a few off, and the plant has sort of, you know, sprawled as opposed to growing upright. So I don't know if I'm doing something wrong with these. I think I do have some of these. I started cuttings a few weeks ago, and I think they have rooted, but I'll just check on them in a minute. So here is some blooms coming. So then again, the way I understand it, this entire stem all the way in is going to be a bloom stem, and should actually be removed if you don't want the plant to be blooming, and just concentrate on vegetative growth so that I could get a bunch of cuttings. And then each cutting should eventually grow to a point where they will have bloom stalks as well. So it's, they grow differently than zonals. Zonals, they bloom on every stem. Martha Washington or these regals do not. These are also some zonals that are doing really nicely down in here, still giving me lots and lots of color, blooming like crazy. This one in the middle is not blooming. I had it on the kitchen table upstairs, and it's not blooming at the moment, but boy, did it give me a show for a while. And I see that it's pushing out buds again, so pretty happy plant. The thing about these is, you know, about geraniums in the houses, they are a little bit messy. They do have the odd dead leaf you have to pick up, and just like outside, their bloom stalks get a little bit messy and they will fall. So that's the problem with geraniums. But this is a basement room, and you know, it's just so nice when I walk in because it's nice and bright. So yeah, there's how it looks. You know, like I said, nice and bright flowers, and I leave those lights on. They're set on. They're on a timer for 16 hours a day, and yeah, I quite like it like that. And I don't have a whole lot going on here in the grow room just yet. These are the geranium cuttings that I took, and that was mostly because I was trimming off the geraniums, and so I thought, well, you know, can't hurt. They are still on a heat mat, just for bottom heat, and I do think that they have rooted, but I really don't want to disturb them just yet. Usually wait until I see some roots poking out the bottom, but you know, it looks to me like they are putting on some new growth, and so I feel like they've probably rooted in there, and I'm just going to leave them, let them be. I have some succulents. Oh, there we go. All kinds of roots on that one. I have some succulent pieces here that are just, I'm just trying to make some new succulents, and they look like they are rooting there. If you're going to do this, you just basically put the leaf on top of soil, and you don't keep it wet or anything. I also have a little Dichondra there. Looks like a seedling. It's not from anything else, so that little Dichondra right there, which is that Silver Falls that I have in the other room. I have a little one growing there. A couple more of these Swedish ivy, which they're nice for filler, so they're easy to take, they're easy to keep trimmed. And then I thought, well, I'm going to try my hand at growing some dill, and I don't know how long this has been here now, perhaps 3 weeks. It's doing okay. I think I probably should transplant it into something better. Mostly I just wanted to try. So I bought these tomato seeds. They're called Red Robin, and I grew them once before, although not in the winter. But they're a very small in stature tomato. They will grow to, I think, about 12 inches tall. They're called Red Robin. They're actually dwarf plants, and it says they're great for the patio garden. Back when I grew them once before, I had read that they were good for growing indoors. But they are supposed to be good for indoor growing, first of all, because they're not very big, and they can tolerate lower light. So even though I have grow lights, and I have a sunny south window, it would still be considered low light, unless I put them on the other grow lights, because those are a full spectrum, whereas these are not. So I thought I'd give them a try. These are actually, I have 2 seeds in here growing very nicely. They're nice and stocky, nice green. They're doing well, and like I said, there's 2 plants in here, so I really do need to separate them and start growing them in their own pots. But they're not reaching for light at all, so that's a good sign. Like the space between the nodes is fine. It's not getting all gangly or anything. And I just have it on top of that just to get them a little bit closer to the light source instead of having them low down, whereas maybe then they would start to stretch. I'm not sure. And so that's really all that's going on in my grow room. We can go upstairs and just check out a few more of the other plants that I am overwintering. And here's what I have going on just above the kitchen sink. It's where I've put the 2 hibiscus and the 2 Dipladenia, as well as the variegated leaf geranium. And everything is doing really good up here. I think it benefits from the extra humidity from the sink. As well, I moved my kettle over here, and when I boil the kettle, that bay window in there just sort of kind of fills with, a little bit of steam, and I think that the plants really like it. I've put my hand here, the kettle's right here. I've put my hand here, and it's warm mist or warm steam that it gets for sure, but it doesn't seem to be bothering it in any way. These are all doing quite well. Here's a hibiscus, and this flower is now spent. These are actually quite easy so far to take care of. Of course, they're small, but they do keep putting out the blossoms. I have been feeding it with fertilizer pretty much every time I water, and I do have to watch for aphids on these. And one of the nice things about it being right here at the kitchen sink, and usually good light, it's usually, or when it's sunny, you know, you can almost see if there's some trouble, but the aphids for sure tend to kind of be on the bud itself if there were any. And so two things I can do when I'm doing the dishes with a soapy wet hand. I will just kind of, you know, if I see anything, I'll just rub my hands over it. The other thing you can do is just carefully just rinse them, and that usually gets rid of them as well as washes those aphids down the drain. So so far these are doing, I have 2 pots of these, and so far they're doing well. They're not stretching. They're probably not, perhaps not as bright as they would be outside, but they are doing, you know, they are doing just fine. I'm quite happy with them, and I do like this location, you know, because of the aphids. This plant is doing exceptionally well, I think. It does get the odd dry leaf that has to be picked off, but that's about it. Never found geraniums to have aphids or any kind of bugs at all. So they're, you know, that's not usually a consideration for these. I am going to come through at some point this winter and take a bunch of cuttings, which will, you know, definitely lower the canopy of this plant. It's quite prolific. It's really grown a lot since I've purchased it, a great deal. So it's yeah, it's a good plant. And then the Dipladenia, oops. So, you know, they're really growing and vining a lot more than I thought they would, and I keep cutting the vines off. But it keeps pushing new growth, and on that new growth tends to be a bunch of flower buds, like right there. That's a bunch of flower buds. I have found aphids a few times, and generally they are right on the growing tip, so it's not that difficult to find them or to look for them. You know, you kind of know where they're going to be. And again, I've come in just with a soapy hand and just kind of brush off the leaves with that soapy hand. The other thing I do with all these plants is I turn them every other day so that they're getting good light on all sides. But for sure, the challenge with these, with mine anyway, is the aphids. And I do have a systemic in the soil, which I don't know that it was actually, if that systemic actually does treat aphids or kill off aphids as much as it does mealybugs. It, you know, if it does kill off aphids, that's not working, because I have been finding them. Although you know, they're certainly not to the point where they're damaging the plant at all, and that's simply because I have been pretty diligent at watching them. This was the one that I actually found quite a few on, and when I find a stem that has a lot of them on there, I just simply take off that growing point. This one had a lot of growth on it. The other day, when I actually cut off quite a bit of these viney stems. I don't really want it to be that huge. I'd like to just keep this growing and alive, and something that perhaps I can put outside next summer. but at the same time, I really don't want an aphid infestation, so I do have to be careful and watch them. But if you know, that's always been kind of a thing for me. If I have a plant where on the growing tips there's lots of aphids or whatever the bug may be, but very often it's aphids, I simply take that, I trim that stem off and I dispose of it instead of trying to get rid of the aphids, because usually a plant will push out more growth fairly quickly. These are very strong growers, and they're just growing like crazy, considering this should be the season where they're slowing down in growth and starting to go into a dormant period. At some point they may start to lose their leaves, or they may start to go dormant, and you know, at that point I'll treat them differently. I'll probably put them downstairs and give them a rest at that point. But for right now, they sure are making a nice house plant with lots of nice blossoms that last for quite a few days. I have to say, the blooms do last for quite a while, and then they just fall. So they're easy to take care of, with the exception of the aphids. All the rest of the house plants are doing well. I try to keep them I don't try to keep them actively growing. More so, I just try to keep them alive and not suffering at all. But I cut way back on the watering when I bring them in. I've started using a moisture meter actually for testing a lot of the plants, and a lot of the succulents. I like it. It goes from 1 to 10, dry to wet. And I like it to see it dry and actually be dry for a week or two before I give them water again. And I find that that's the best way for the succulents when they are not actively growing. When they're outside in the summer and actively growing, I water them a lot. I water them very frequently, or they get rain very frequently. As long as the soil is the good drainage, then they're going to be fine getting lots of water because they're actively growing. But in the house, they're not. They're just kind of hanging out, and you know, until better days come, and then they'll start putting on growth. And that's kind of the way that you stop them from getting too leggy. There are some plants that are more difficult, no matter what you do, and Echeveria is one of those. I actually have a pot here that you could see. This is Echeveria. And, you know, it's not very healthy looking. It kind of is pushing out some whitish growth instead of the nice pink. And granted, it is a little crowded in here, but I've pretty much stopped buying Echeveria. But for the most part, they're all doing fine. I probably should have trimmed back the jade plants early last summer so that they would have just had new growth, but I didn't. And so now they almost look like they're a little overgrown, like they're too big. But I don't want to cut them back now, because any growth that they put on at this time would be kind of weak, pale growth. So I'm just going to leave them and let them be. They're all pretty much on the bottom shelf. And the big Golem Jade is just over in the corner back there. There is the Golem Jade. It's doing really well. I'm very happy with that plant. And then all of the other jades are down here. Kind of just a little bit crowded in here because of all the growth. And they will I'll trim them back good next year. So just a little close-up of what I've got going on here. This is a desert rose. I was happy to see that it bloomed this year. I did have to treat it for mealybug, but I got rid of the mealybugs and they seem to be doing okay. And in order to treat the mealybugs, I took it downstairs and I sprayed the entire plant with undiluted 99% isopropyl alcohol. I think it's 99%, but it's a high percentage. And as long as you keep it out of the light after you spray it for a few hours until it dries, it does fine. That's the best way I have found for treating mealybug. So they're all doing pretty good up here. The other thing I've started using this year is this tap water conditioner. It removes chlorine and chloramine and detoxifies heavy metals. It's for aquariums, but I read a bit about it, that it actually helps helps your plant water, or the water that you're using for plants. So I fill up a 5-gallon pail in the basement and leave it there. And I leave it there mostly for it to warm up to the room temperature. And as well, the chlorine will dissipate, but chloramine is more and more municipalities and towns and cities are treating water now with chloramine instead of chlorine, and chloramine will not dissipate. And it is actually really hard for some plants, not for all of them. And so yeah, this says it instantly removes chlorine and chloramines, detoxifies heavy metals to make tap water safe for fish. So it takes, the little cap that it comes with is a dosing cap as well. And I think for a 5-gallon pail, it's 1 millimeter, which is just like a few drops almost. There's inside the cap, there is a little space there where it says 1 millimeter that you fill it up. It's like nothing. This bottle's gonna last me forever, I think. So anyways, I think that perhaps it has made a difference. I know the spider plant will really suffer from what I always thought was chlorine in the water, but I believe that, like I said, more and more places, you'd have to ask at your town or municipality or city what the water is treated with. But from what I read, like 90% of the places are being treated with chloramine instead of chlorine, or perhaps both, but chloramine is definitely in the water. And yeah, it's hard on plants. So, and not all plants. Some are just more sensitive than others. And, you know, on the spider plants, you get those brown tips, and that's generally from the water. So I think perhaps it hasn't hurt anyways, let's put it that way. And I think it's probably worth it if you're having trouble with something in your plant that in your house plant that you can't figure out. This might be worth a try. I got this on Amazon, and I can put just a courtesy link in the description below for you as well. Anyways, I think that's about all I have. That's what's going on with me in the middle of November. I won't be around for a little while. I won't have any new videos for a few weeks now. I have some other things that I need to take care of, and I won't be able to do any videos during that time. So hopefully I'll see you again before Christmas, or if not before Christmas, then perhaps in the new year. I'll be able to get a video going then. So thanks very much for hanging out and for watching the video today. I appreciate you taking the time to do so. If you enjoyed the video, as always, give me a thumbs up, tell your friends, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Thanks again. See you.